And we are live. Testing, testing. Let me center myself a little bit here. Hey, so welcome everybody to the MintGox Podcast. It's a podcast where we talk about Lightning gaming and all things gaming and Lightning. Today we have a very special guest who I've been wanting to get on for a while. He's a really interesting guy. It's Ruben Somsen, who goes as a self-titled Bitcoin sorcerer. Can you just well, let's start there. What exactly is a
Sure.
Bitcoin sorcerer? So it sounds like a kind of fun in gaming.
Sure. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. No, I mean, it was just kind of a bit of a joke because so I've been working on a bunch of proposals, and they now all start with an S. So we've got first StateChains, then after that, Spacechains, then SoftChains. My last name is Somsen. So then sorcerer also starts with an S. So I thought it was fitting. And it's just kind of a bit of a joke because like there's the Bitcoin Wizards IRC channel, which is sort of it's kind of the similar joke where just people who do stuff that seems like magic to people who don't know technology, and I think this sort of fits that mold. So that's why I thought it was kind of fitting.
Yeah, no, like so with the MintGox podcast, which is kind of means the magical
Even
internet
better.
gathering, right?
I
So
wish I had a wizard hat here, but
oh,
yeah. I mean, I do have one,
the,
but I'm not supposed to show it on camera. That's that's how it works.
it's for the bedroom only. No, okay. Sorry, we're starting off in a bad. Yeah,
Well,
so we actually had Brecky from Swan Bitcoin. He actually came on as a wizard and tried to do
oh,
a wizard voice for about 20 minutes until his voice went, I think. So it's been done before.
impressive.
So yeah. But that's actually quite interesting. So so for our viewers, Ruben is actually he's very, very technically knowledgeable about Bitcoin. So as you rightly said, to a lot of like people who aren't developers, even to people who are developers, a lot of what you write about does sound like magic, right? So,
Well, I do hope to like kind of demystify it. Like my goal is not to leave people hanging and not understand it, but it is just a lot. Like if you don't have a lot of knowledge surrounding the topic, it is hard to understand exactly how it works. But very much, I try to actually like one of my goals is to have it be very accessible, and that also kind of comes from I guess the way I started with Bitcoin, which is at running the Bitcoin Meetup in Seoul, and trying to teach others. That's one a way in which I learned a lot just by teaching, and two, it's basically I think it's very important. I think for Bitcoin in particular, people have to not specifically my layer two proposals. That's well, I think it's still very interesting, and people would like to know how it works. But just very generally speaking, I think Bitcoin is still early days, and if you really want to have kind of a meaningful, if you want to help Bitcoin in the Bitcoin ecosystem, it starts with understanding the technology.
yeah, I was helping Desiree Dickerson from Lightning Labs. We had to teach some fifth graders about Bitcoin, which was definitely an interesting
Oh.
challenge kind of thing. Let's just start. Actually, so I think what a lot of people might not know, you don't actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't actually come from a technical or a computing background, but you
Yeah,
started in Bitcoin running the Bitcoin meetup in Seoul, Korea. Is that right? So how
yeah,
did
that's
you
right.
kind of like stumble into that? Like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, obviously by now, pretty much know the equivalent of having a computer science background, but
sure.
I don't literally have one. But yeah, no, it's as a hobby, I was always interested in technology, and I did some programming. I don't do a lot of programming, but I can program. Um, and yeah, for Bitcoin specifically, at the time, I was in Seoul. I'm in the Netherlands now, and I think there were a couple of things that were going on for me. Like one was kind of that I had to sort of figure out a way to do something social while I was there. And a meetup was a good way of doing that. Then, I caught the Bitcoin bug and I was just very interested personally in how it works. And then I kind of put the two together. Like first it was just me actually seeing if there were any meetups out there. And the answer was basically no. So I started one and interesting people came, and that's just kind of how the whole thing got rolling. Um, I made a lot of friends through that meetup, and it was also like me learning and then helping others understand it. And the way I saw it at the time was that it took me a long time to, at the time, it took me a long time to understand a lot of things about Bitcoin. And especially back then, these days there are many resources online. It's much easier now to go on YouTube and find good technical videos that explain a lot of things. And I would say even today it's difficult, but back then it was even harder. So for me, it was just sort of like, I find this fascinating, but it was very difficult to learn. So what took me, a whole week Googling on the internet and reading obscure articles and going on IRC and just reading what the devs were saying. I can condense that in one meetup, with a couple of guys and just talking to them and explaining it. So I saw that as very beneficial to them. I found it fun. It was something social for me to do. So that's kind of how it ended up, working out. And, it just kind of escalated from there, where it got more and more technical to the point where now I'm creating these layer 2 proposals.
Yeah. So you were attending non-Bitcoin meetups in Korea, like as a social thing, and then you caught the Bitcoin bug. Was that from one of those meetups, or was it just?
No, sorry, no. I'm talking about literally. So I wasn't really No, I wasn't attending any non-Bitcoin meetups. That's not what I'm saying. No, I was saying I got interested in Bitcoin. I was seeing if there were any meetups out there. There weren't any. And then I just started my own. So that was literally the first meetup. Afterwards, because I enjoyed the concept, like meetup.com specifically is what I used, I ended up attending other meetups as well. And that's been kind of fun. So yeah, I've definitely done a lot of that afterwards, but that was not how things got started.
Got you. Yeah. No, I think that's a good thing about Bitcoin. You get people coming, like, Peter Todd was like a fine arts degree background or something like that. It kind of like, it gets people from different disciplines into doing it. And I have a computer science background, and like, I don't know half as much as some of these people who know, but
right, yeah.
I think that speaks to the poor quality of computer science degrees nowadays, but that's another question. That's another issue.
Well, it depends, I guess.
Yeah.
Each university is different, right? So
yeah. I think I've said this before, but I remember I graduated not knowing how to program, so I kind of went on the internet.
Well, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's like a whole other thing, but yeah. I managed to get a first somehow, but I know how to play the game and write the essays and everything on the social implications of computing in the modern world, something like that.
Yeah, it sounds like something I would give an A. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so before we kind of dive into some of the more kind of technical, magical things, let's say it's a better word than technical, magical things, just for like our listeners who might be interested to hear, like, what is Bitcoin like in Korea? Like, how does that compare to other countries, would you say?
So I think, one of the things I just described and one of the goals that I had there was very much to help other people understand Bitcoin, learn more about it. And since I was in Korea, I was very much focused on getting Koreans involved. And that actually, interestingly, sort of didn't end up working out. And I now attribute that to, like, I tried for about 6 years or so. So, it's not like, I think people have the
Do you
tendency
speak Korean?
to think,
or?
like, I also speak Korean, yeah.
Okay.
People have the tendency to think like that everybody's like them, and I had that tendency very much. But I think society like Korea and Japan, I think I can't speak to Japan as much as you can, but I think there's kind of a similar vibe, where at least in Korea specifically, people are very focused on following a path and getting their career on a track and not getting off that track. And anything that's like open source, hobby, that kind of thing is just sort of frowned upon or seen as risky or seen as you're wasting your life, right? When you are not doing the thing that is safe and certain and gets you, your nice little family with job security. So that I think as a whole kind of makes it very difficult for people to go there and be like, I don't know if this Bitcoin thing is going to be useful to me specifically in the future, but I'm just curious and I just want to learn because I think it's cool. Like, that attitude just was extremely rare there, and there have been a few exceptions, like Kelvin, who was a large part of the meetup, helping with organizing it, and is now contributing to a U3XO. So not everyone, but even him, like he's sort of like Korean American. You know, he spent a large amount of time in the States, so it's also like he's not the typical Korean person, you know. So that's, I would say, like in terms of like answering your question specifically, I think the vibe there is very much I want to get rich, and they're very susceptible to ICOs. That's sort of just how it ends up being, unfortunately.
It sounds very similar to Japan, and kind of just to go on your more broader point about people wanting to do kind of stable things. I remember one guy explained to me that, say in the States or Europe, if you kind of like took some years out and tried to start a company and like, or it didn't really work, and then you went back to do a job, that would actually be seen as a plus. Like, oh, you've got these entrepreneurial skills, you actually tried to do something. But if you did that in Japan, and I'm assuming so Korea, that would be like, a blotch on your CV. You wouldn't mention it. So exactly, which is a bit sad in a way.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. So, well, I think, like this sounds very negative, but it's negative in the context of Bitcoin, right? And open source things. But I think for them as a society, this works. Sure. And it has upsides as well. Like just looking at how organized, Japan is, and Korea as well. Korea is organized to a lesser extent than Japan, but Japan is crazy organized. Korea is still very organized, and it's just very nice. Like it's super safe, right? Like Japan and Korea both are super safe countries. People will be surprised, but like I'm sure you would agree with me. Like if you went to a coffee shop and you left your laptop on the table and you just went home, and then a couple of hours later you were like, "Oh, I left my laptop." You're not concerned that it's gone, right?
No.
It's just gotta be there, right? It's just it's just safe.
It's
like that.
Yeah, no, definitely kind of. I think living in Japan in a way definitely, like I would say, made me more conservative in a way in respect. Kind of the. That kind of certain, because I think a lot of the good things they do well. Obviously, it has negative side effects, but a lot of it comes from kind of I would say more traditional ways of doing things. Well, obviously that has side effects as well. But anyway, yeah.
But yeah, I don't see it like, I mean, in the context of open source, it is a bad thing. But I think very generally speaking, there's a lot of sorry in music, music I guess as well. Yeah,
rock. Anyway, rock bands and stuff.
Rock music.
Yeah.
Well, in Korea they have all this like very generic K-pop, which is very just pop-like.
Sure.
Very, very formulaic, but also catchy. It's very hard to get out of your head once you've heard the songs. But no, but I would just say like I think both, very generally speaking, in terms of life skills. I think both sides is something you need to be able to do, and you need to pick what applies to what situation. And sort of, in certain situations, it's better to have the Asian mindset, like Japanese or Korean, and sometimes it's better to have the more Western mindset of individualism.
I've heard, I don't know if it's true in Korea, but I've definitely heard in Japanese companies, they'll often hire a foreigner, and his job in the company is to kind of say these outlandish things and point things out that maybe a Japanese person wouldn't feel comfortable doing. Just like saying to the boss, that's a bad idea, or, why don't we do something like this? So, I found that interesting, but.
Yeah. Well, I think in Korea, it's a little bit more, they have a harder time, I feel, integrating with foreigners. Okay. And they talk a lot as if they're very international, but I think they don't. They have a hard time actually making that happen. Basically, I think Japan actually did a better job, superficially speaking. Like I did live in Japan for a little while, but not as long as Korea. It seems like in Japan it's a little bit more. Integrated. The foreigners are a little bit more integrated.
Yeah. Especially
that might also be because Japan became popular first, right? Like I think just anecdotally, I feel like there was a lot of interest in Japan, and Korea's interest has only like relatively recently, over the last.
This is true.
5 years or so, kind of it's gotten on the map now. So maybe that'll be changing, but.
You can go on to Netflix, and there's less and less Japanese animes and more Korean dramas coming up. I've noticed this. I kind of switch. That that looks like a good, interesting Japanese show because I'm trying to like keep up my language and go, oh, it's Korean. Oh, another Korean one. So, but so definitely there's a culture thing. So as you said, they might be opening it up now.
So let me ask you then, because so it sounds like you've watched Japanese drama, you've watched Korean drama, and I've watched both as well. And I have a very strong preference for Japanese drama. I think Korean drama is actually quite terrible. I think Korean movies are great.
Yes.
But for some reason, the drama is pretty darn terrible, in my opinion, at least. Do you feel similarly, or?
Yeah. So, the movies are great. They have some great movies. I remember the one called Old Boy, which was quite popular, and then recently have Parasite. I kind of avoided the Korean dramas just because it's kind of it's known in Japan. It's what like Japanese housewives watch, right? And it's kind of they have like the good-looking boy, and it's always the same story: love triangle, love triangle, love triangle. I think Japan does.
Disputes.
Yeah, so Japan does some great dramas, but again, they do some terrible ones as well. I think it's they generally we're kind of getting off the topic of Bitcoin, but anyway, who cares? But what I don't like about Japanese dramas, they'll have a great story or a great idea, and Japan has a lot of like, as you probably know, like manufactured factory entertainment. So they have this company called Johnny's Entertainment, where they basically get school kids, they put them through this factory called Johnny's Entertainment, and they basically pop out entertainers who can act, they can sing, they can dance, but they can't do any of them well. So they put these people in the show, and instead of like real actors. I kind of think in England, for example, they're an actor. A singer is a singer, but in Japan they kind of have these entertainers, I suppose. And I think a lot of the dramas in Japan that can let it down. But when they don't do that, when they have some of the actual only people who act, the dramas are much better. But sounding like an old guy, like they don't do that in modern day dramas. They kind of gone all commercial, and the dramas were better in the 90s kind of thing.
Okay, well, I haven't really kept up with recent Japanese drama, so maybe that's also why I have that impression. But very generally speaking, I think it's more the story where I connect more with the Japanese stories, where everything seems to happen for a reason. And I like, there are a few really like corny tropes that they have in Japanese dramas, like for instance, like that the bad guy is always secretly a good guy. He means well, but for some reason he ended up doing something bad or something. There's always like a little story like that, but I don't know. I like the corniness, but at least it's like explained. Whereas in Korean drama, it's very much things just happen, and then it's sad that this happened, and look at how sad this is or how emotional this is, and that's supposed to elicit some emotional response. But then for me, it's like This is just so random. It just happens. Like I'm not invested in this story, so that's just why it doesn't work for me.
Do you have like a favorite Japanese drama, or?
I don't know.
I'll recommend some to you. Okay. I was gonna. Yeah. Well, no. I was gonna say I could recommend a few good ones, which are my favorites, which I think Bitcoin people would like them, because they're like quite logical and technical and stuff. But it's hard to find actually. But animes are pretty good actually.
There's one that comes to mind actually. That's kind of fun, but I think I'm actually more in the anime of this style than the drama. But do you know a drama called Liar Game?
Yes, I know Liar Game. Yeah. I have.
It's a little corny.
It's a little corny, but is it based on a manga? Is it from an anime? A lot of the corny ones are actually based on manga, likely. So that's why it's like when they translate to drama, it's a bit weird, but it's because they're trying to stay true to it. No, that's like a famous one.
So I like the genre of this sort of, I would say, like gambling anime drama, that kind of thing. There's a couple, like the anime are actually better. Like there's a Kaiji in particular, so it's quite good enough. You've heard of that one?
What's it called?
But it's Kaiji.
Kaiji. No, but there's so many.
That's the name of the character. So it's not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No.
Like they're like a couple, like Akagi, which is like a mahjong anime, and One Outs. These are all like from the same I think manga writer, but these are all sort of like psychological gambling sort of stories. So it's quite interesting. Kaiji's the one I recommend the most if you're gonna watch one.
I'll check it out actually, because I'm looking, because I'm always looking for things to watch to try and keep up my my Japanese.
Sure.
but actually through the Kaiji, through the magic of screen share, I can actually share it, and
It's the character has a very distinct sharp nose. So if you're gonna look it up, you'll see that. There's actually a friend of mine today told me that there's apparently an app that allows you to turn on 2 subtitles for Netflix, so you can get both. It works for Korean at least. Like he's in Korea, so he told me it works for Korean and English, and I would assume it works for Japanese and English as well. So that could be useful.
Yeah, at the moment I've got just good enough that I can try to watch it all in Japanese, and if I get confused, I just pause it and ask my wife next to me, like, what was he on about, kind of thing. That's what I'm trying to do at the moment. But yes,
I like the double subtitle thing. It's very effective, actually. You should give it a try.
No, I think that's actually good. I want to watch some TV shows with my wife, so maybe yes, like some more.
She can learn English.
Yeah, like there's some more difficult ones where, like, if it's like a simple anime, I can watch in Japanese. But if it's something like more complicated, I'll just get lost. So I'll check that out. Is this the one? I'm sharing my screen here. Kaiji.
Yeah, that's one.
Gambling Apocalypse. Kaiji is a Japanese manga. I like that.
It's quite good, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what the Kai and G mean here, because it's written in katakana.
I mean, it's the name of the character, but
okay, his
obviously
name.
there are Chinese characters attached to it, but
yeah, interesting. Oh, I'll check that out actually. One that people have recommended to me, which I haven't watched yet, is Dr. Stone. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
It's
anything recent I haven't really kept up with, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been recommended quite a lot. So it's like I have this rule that if I get if something's recommended to me like from 4 different people, I should watch it because it's kind of
good rule.
But the story is something like they're like sent back to like the caveman period, and it's like they have to try and create the modern world from just what they know, right? So like, so how do we? I guess also how. I haven't actually seen it, so I might be saying it wrong. But like, how do we like make fire, or how do we make a radio? Like, how would you go about that? Like, just given, So apparently, it teaches how to make explosives. Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect.
It tells you how to make explosives as well, apparently. But I think they edited that out for the Western audience.
So this is Japanese, or I assume then, or
it's Japanese one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So. Cool. Anyway.
So great anime J-drama cast here. Yeah. I hope the audience enjoys our little ramble.
Segue into Bitcoin. There should be a Bitcoin anime at some point. I'm sure there will be actually. Yeah. There's a few mangas, so that's how it normally works. Somebody does a manga, and then the studio will take it up and make it an anime. So
yeah, well, that's the safe bet, right? Because it's kind of interesting actually. I like that approach where you take kind of a low cost a device to create something that's interesting story-wise, and then you just take it and you expand it into something more expensive in production. Yeah. So yeah, makes good sense to me.
Well, that's what we do with novels, right? A lot of the best shows,
I guess,
are novels, right? So the story is good, and it kind of works, and then sometimes the live action will ruin it completely. I guess a lot of people are saying Game of Thrones now or something, but anyway. Yeah, cool. Anyway, let's just kind of let's just switch base a bit there. So hopefully most of our audience is still here. We've got a few comments saying people like anime. Anyway,
that's good.
So let's go back to so I'm a game developer, and we're kind of doing Bitcoin and gaming at Zebedee, at the company I co-founded. And
I see.
One of the questions we get is we get a lot of people asking about, what chain should I use for Bitcoin gaming? Oh, sorry, what chain should I use for gaming? And NFTs are all the craze at the moment.
Right.
Should we use Ethereum or should we use EOS? And I kind of, get asked this question, and my answer to them is actually I think none of them are very good. But there's something called StateChains with this guy called Ruben came up with. And I kind of thought that they would actually be good for doing a lot of like the tokens that people want in gaming. But I don't think anybody outside of kind of the Bitcoin developer circle is really aware of it. So maybe you just want to kind of just explain kind of some of the stuff you're working on. So I know StateChains, you've kind of made soft chains and Spacechains. But maybe if you just want to kind of give
quite a few chains.
Yeah, quite a few chains, but maybe we could just start there.
Yeah, so I think first to like kind of how you're saying like these people are looking for a place to put their NFT. I
Yeah.
think they're probably looking for a more complete solution that's just ready, right? Like in terms of StateChains, it's not really ready at the moment for NFT transfer. Maybe with the commerce block implementation, you could do something that's sort of NFT like. But I would actually, at the moment, I would probably recommend anyone who wants to issue just an NFT to use something like Liquid. That seems like the place that is easiest stable in terms of fees, right? Because with Ethereum, you're going to have a lot of trouble. I think your users are going to have a lot of trouble with the on-chain fees going up and down, and then things like EOS are just
Nuts.
not
Is just,
stable
oh, sorry.
enough. Yeah, it's just too experimental and crazy, right? That I wouldn't like want to rely on that. Yeah, unless your NFT is just something shitty that you don't care about next year, then obviously you can pick any chain you want. But so that would be kind of my first answer to that. But then specific to StateChains. So with StateChains, it's actually a protocol that allows you to take an entire UTXO on the Bitcoin blockchain and take that off chain. And in doing so, um, you have to rely on a federation, so it's not a completely trusted setup. It's not completely trustless, but you do gain a lot of. Well, first, it's much more scalable because it's off chain. There are some features that make it very difficult for the federation to cheat on you. So it is at least as secure as it can be while it's relying on the federation. But the general downside with taking this UTXO off chain is that you have to send the full amount. So if there's a 1 Bitcoin UTXO, you have to send the entire Bitcoin from one person to another person. But if the UTXO contains an NFT, and this is for instance possible through something like RGB or really any kind of colored coin protocol on Bitcoin. If it contains an NFT, well, the NFT is already non-fungible, right? You already cannot split it up.
Yeah.
So in that sense, StateChains becomes quite perfect.
That's why because I remember when you're talking about StateChains, and just to give like a bit of background for more of the non-technical listeners, these are all kind of like scaling solutions for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has like a limit and of like 2 megabyte blocks, and our viewers should be familiar with the Lightning Network, which is one scaling solution to Bitcoin, which I'm sure we all use at MintGox. And if people are watching, they can tip Ruben with the QR code over the Lightning Network. But the Lightning Network is only really suited for like towards small payments, and where a StateChains was a way, I guess, to do off-chain larger payments, but you couldn't like split the amount. So if you were you would have to decide like how much you were going to put on the StateChain. So you would have to put like half a Bitcoin, and then you could only ever send on half a Bitcoin, which was a little bit of the criticism. But then I kind of thought, well, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, like you don't need to split them because they can't be split, right? So that was kind of the interesting aspect, I thought. So like when speaking to a lot of people, like you kind of said that StateChains aren't ready, but I would kind of argue that a lot of the other solutions, such as chains beginning with E, let's say, aren't really ready either. They're not, I think a lot of people would kind of build an app and put it on some of these like EOS and Ethereum chains, and then like at some point the app's just not going to work because these chains don't scale. So I was always just like, I remember speaking to a person, and he was like basically saying that we need to do something now as a company because this is the NFT bubble or whatever. We don't want to be too late, but anything we choose now is guaranteed to be the wrong answer, kind of thing.
Yeah. So well, I mean, so that just you're right, but that's the problem, right? Like, so the question is, what do you want to do? Do you want to do it right and create the thing that is going to be long-term sustainable, or are you seeing the hype and do you want to catch a buck? If you want to catch a buck, you're going to go to Ethereum because look, if you put your NFT on Liquid, you don't have access to the type of people that are gonna buy into the NFT hype.
Sure,
right? They are all on the Ethereum blockchain. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. And for the people that are trying to, get some money from the NFT hype, yeah, Ethereum is the place to be right now, definitely. I'm personally more interested in the long-term view as to like where are things supposed to, like where are they going to go? Because what you just pointed out is like Ethereum is not going to scale for every NFT forever. So that's why things like StateChains I think are more appealing. And there's also something that, well, I guess we'll get into it in a minute, but I just want to point out that I actually think Spacechains are probably the better place to put your NFTs.
Well, Fiat Jeff has just said in the comments, Spacechains are better for NFTs than StateChains. And then he commented, actually, no. And then he commented, I can't decide.
Fair, yeah.
So, yeah. Just before we get on to Spacechains, so Spacechains are, I guess, so I will... Probably it's fair to say that Ruben has come up with like 3 different types of chains, like side chains to scale Bitcoin, and each one has different trade-offs. So Spacechain is another one which has slightly different trade-offs to sidechain. But I just want to talk about Liquid a little bit because, as you know, I was doing like NFTs on Bitcoin, got told off for doing it as well. But before they were called NFTs, and I remember a lot of people actually even people who were doing Bitcoin gaming on Bitcoin, they were even doing tokens. A lot of people left the chain because the fees were too expensive at $10 or something. So they said Ethereum, I'll move over there because it's cheaper fees, ironically. Yeah. But I had to do some research for a company, who was like, basically, what scaling solution do we use? And this was just as Liquid came out. And my opinion of Liquid was, if you wanted to do gaming on Liquid, one of the issues was that because the functionaries for Liquid, so Liquid is a sidechain and it's kind of basically run by exchanges, right? All the exchanges are kind of part of the federation, and the exchanges in a way are kind of like the miners. They basically run the chain. I know that it's saying it wrong. And they originally made it because they want to basically help liquidity between exchanges, right? You can move coins between exchanges quickly if you wanted to do arbitrage. Yeah. So I always thought that if you were to put a game on there that was very, very successful, and those exchanges aren't interested in that game or that gaming's ecosystem, and that gaming takes up a lot of traffic and block space, there's no incentive for those functionaries, for the federation, to basically continue accepting that traffic, and they may censor it if it's not helping their business. So I always thought that if you wanted a Liquid-based sidechain for gaming, you would have to make it as functionaries who are actually in the gaming industry, so the incentives align, because there's no financial incentive in Liquid. They don't get block reward or anything, do they? I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts on that. Or
yeah, no, I think you're sort of right. Like long-term issues like that may very well creep up. I think we're very far away from that.
Sure.
So unless you're like thinking you really want to be like 5-10 years from now still have your game be active on there, maybe you are actually right about that. The way it's set up today is that it is, even though the use case is between exchanges, the chain itself is very general, right? You can use it for anything you like.
Sure.
We could send LBTC payments from and to each other. To you can buy coffees from me or something, right? You could use the chain for that. So yeah, I don't know if that means that it's going to be specifically difficult to do use cases that they are focusing on, or whether they're just going to run the chain and just say, okay, well, whoever pays the highest fee as it is today just gets in the chain. Yeah, that's hard to predict.
Do they take fees in Liquid, or like are the functionaries? Because like I thought they don't get any. Oh, they get the fees then.
Yeah, the functionaries don't get the fees, but fees are being paid, and I believe they go to Blockstream in order to pay for the peg-ins and the peg-outs, because they require transactions.
Sure.
Fees.
Okay.
And that's not a profit making business there. It's just purely to cover some costs.
Yeah.
But that can change, right? If blocks become really full, maybe fees become significant on there.
Yeah, well, it's just like the reason I said that, because I remember with Counterparty, a lot of Bitcoin nodes were like basically not propagating counterparty transactions because they didn't want like non-Bitcoin use cases on the chain. So there was like a definite kind of attempt that I don't want this stuff on my node kind of thing. So I just thought, But I think your point is quite fair that, like, there's no best solution, and in 5 or 10 years, like, the technology, there'll be so many new things coming out. You could technically upgrade your game and move to another specified chain. Or this is actually probably a good segue. Like, if that were to become an issue on Liquid, they could maybe like do a swap of all the items onto a space chain or something.
Yes. Yeah.
So what is a space chain? And I'm interested to also hear where the name comes from as well. It's not space as in cosmos. Is it space as in area? No.
It's space as in block space. It's a block space chain.
Got you.
That's the idea.
So why are they? Yeah. Why would you say they're better for NFTs and state chains?
Yeah. So the federated model, the federated chain like Liquid, has sort of the federation is performing two functions. They are creating the chain and they're signing every block, and they are performing the peg-ins and the peg-outs. There's no reason why you couldn't separate the two. And in fact, if you look at something like Ethereum, where people have also issued two-way peg assets in a federated style, like WBTC, for instance, it is very much this model where you have a decentralized chain with a centralized or IOU, or however you want to call it, federated Bitcoin token on there. So the Spacechains model has sort of two things. The first thing is there's a way in which you can create blocks for a completely separate chain, but you do so by paying Bitcoin miners. So if I want to create a block for a space chain, I just pay a fee in Bitcoin to Bitcoin miners, and basically anyone can do that. And the miners just have to choose the transaction with the highest fee, because only one transaction can make it into the Bitcoin blockchain to create a space chain block. And there's a technical mechanism that I use for that. I won't go into that for now. And through this mechanism, you're basically recreating proof of work, but instead of doing it via ASICs and via actual proof of work, you're doing it with Bitcoin fees. You're paying the Bitcoin miners, and the Bitcoin miners will compete for those fees and turn it into proof of work. And now you have created an alternate chain inside of the Bitcoin blockchain. And very similar to Liquid, the main difference is you don't need the federation, right? You don't need the federation to create these blocks, to create this entire chain. So you can create kind of permissionlessly, you can create as many chains as you like. You can create a chain for your specific NFT or your specific game and have it be very specific to that use case. And that allows you to kind of exclusively use all the space in that chain for the users of your game. So that is very nice. But there's one kind of issue that we haven't really solved here yet, which is that, okay, so you have this alternate chain, but how do you pay for fees on this alternate chain? Because there's no token on there currently.
So let me just stop you.
Yeah. Okay.
Stop you there. So you create this alternate chain. So this is a chain, and it has blocks that are stored the same way. Well, let's just say, this alternate chain, let's just say it's like a fork of Bitcoin. It uses the same technology. You have blocks, and you have a mempool. You have all these things. So and then the mining is just in a way pegged to the Bitcoin chain in a way. So the chain doesn't do any mining. It doesn't use its own proof of work. You're saying that each kind of block is basically put as a hash in a block on the Bitcoin chain.
Yes.
But nodes, like, I'm trying to think what the trade-off is here. On the space chain, nodes still have to store whatever block size they choose. Say the space chain would choose like a gigabyte block size or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those nodes would still have to kind of store that gigabyte blockchain.
That's right.
And say there's only one node that does that. Would that just be like a bad space chain, which wouldn't really give you any decentralization at all, or
that's right. Yeah.
So okay. So
that's pretty much right. But it's also like, I think for low value use cases where it's not super essential that it's like super decentralized.
Sure.
Maybe that's acceptable. Maybe you're fine with 1 gigabyte blockchain. And the people that are not fine with it are not going to use that space chain because it's,
you get what you pay for.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, I might not use that chain. Like 1 gigabyte sounds insane to me, but if people want to do it, I don't really object to it. And that's sort of nice, right? That you have the flexibility, and you can do that if you want. But it's, the main thing I would say in terms of scaling here is that you can create as many chains as you want for as many use cases as you want. And so instead of, like you were saying earlier, you're sharing the liquid chain with lots of different use cases, and then maybe one use case will prevail over the other. Like rather than the miner starting to censor on liquid, I think it's probably more likely that transaction fees are going to be so high at some point that your gaming use case is just pushed out, right? It's too expensive.
Sure. Yeah. No, that happens to me.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
on Bitcoin,
so
but not on liquid. I mean,
yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Right. So I think here you can at least kind of have your own chain, and you can, all the users of your game or whatever use case it is, they have to run a full node and download that whole thing. But yeah, you're not sharing with others. And to be specific, there's not zero downside here, right? Like the downside
Sure,
is
everything's trade-offs. So.
that the less demand there is for your block space, the lower your fees are, and the lower your fees are, the higher the reorg risk. And the space chain has a separate reorg risk from the Bitcoin blockchain, although it is not quite as bad as having a fully separate chain. It is slightly harder to reorg it, but it is a separate risk. So if the fees are really low, some joker could come in and do 100 block reorg or something if it's like super cheap to do.
So by fees, you mean this is the price you pay to basically kind of cement the space chain block in a block of the main chain, right? So anybody on the space chain can, I guess, make their own block or, make a block. So that's competitive. Yeah. And we're assuming that the people that are honest, I guess, miners or block producers on the space chain, they would pay a higher fee than somebody who just wants to go in there and troll or cause harm or something. Yeah. Is that the kind of assumption there?
Yeah, that's the assumption. And it's also, if you want to troll, you have to continue trolling every block, right? And then if you stop trolling, eventually your troll ends. So you've only halted the chain.
And then people won't use that space chain, and the guy won't get fees for making the block because there'll be no transactions. Is that fair to say? Or
yeah, well, the person who's trolling is if he's just mining all the new transactions, he's not trolling, right? He's just getting fees, and people are happy because he's mining their transactions. So the only way for him to troll is to make a loss, and that's very deliberate, right? Like that's the whole point, and that's also how Bitcoin works. Like you can't make people. You can't force things to happen without incurring a loss.
Yeah. So a lot of people listening to this might say, well, why not just use, let's just say Ethereum, right? And a lot of people are using Ethereum, but I've known that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been quite skeptical, I would say, of Ethereum scaling. Like, what would you say the trade-off is for something like Ethereum? Because obviously they allow people to kind of make transactions, and people are putting their games there, and it's going to be the future of the world computer. Like, why would you say that, like, say, like a space chain or a side chain on Bitcoin would be a better approach long term than, say, using something like Ethereum or EOS? I don't want to pick on just Ethereum, but
so I think, well, I guess there are many reasons, but the most obvious one is that you can have many chains, and that's something I kind of already explained, so I'm not going to go over it again. So it's sharding, right? Sharding for your tokens, if you want to put it in Ethereum terms. I think the Ethereum model in general is kind of questionable, where everything is put on one single chain, and the interoperability is nice, right? I think that's the main win, that you get to do things relatively easily, but the cost of the interoperability, or the easy interoperability, I should say, because you're still interoperable on other chains. It's just harder. You have to use atomic swaps or trusted parties or things like that. But the downside is that you're even less scalable, especially with things like the crazy smart contracts that Ethereum have. Like they have lots of like weird issues that don't exist in Bitcoin today. Like if you create a transaction and you attach a fee to it, it's not guaranteed that the fee that you paid is sufficient. And it might actually be the case that your fee is insufficient, but your fee is still going to be taken. Your transaction is going to be mined. It's going to be put in the block. It's going to turn out that the fees were insufficient, and now you paid your fee, but your transaction didn't happen. But it is in a block, and it is wasting everybody's block space.
I mean, the smart contract ran out of gas Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And then the second thing is that, and this is a kind of actually a related issue, is that there is no actual validation of transactions that are being propagated. So when you send a transaction, nobody actually runs the script. That only happens when it enters a block. And that's kind of what causes this issue to occur. But there's also a reason for that. And that's that you can't validate a transaction out of context. If you want to validate a Ethereum transaction, you need to know the order in which the transactions appear in a block. If you don't know the order, you can't know whether the transaction is valid or not. So even if if you send me an Ethereum transaction, I'm just a node. I look at it, I validate it. I'm like, yeah, this runs. It still doesn't mean it's going to be a valid transaction, because once a block appears, this might change. And what am I supposed to do with every block that appears on the Ethereum blockchain, which is like once every 12 seconds? Do I have to revalidate everything in my mempool? You can't do that. So it's got all these crazy scaling limitations that are just frankly quite insane. Like where in Bitcoin, you can literally validate every transaction before it's even put into a block. And Ethereum, it's just not possible. So, then you get into like all these issues that we can, like in Bitcoin, we are concerned about, where if a miner creates a block before the next miner can build on it, it has to validate the block. But if that takes a long time, that's a problem. But because we can pre-validate all these transactions, we kind of get around that issue. Like that's not a thing you can do in Ethereum. Well, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are just tons of issues with Ethereum's design. And then the third issue I would say is the token itself, ETH. I think it's very questionable whether or not that is actually something, because, okay, if you want to use these smart contracts, you got to use them on something, right? If let's say you had smart contracts, but you didn't have any tokens to use with the smart contracts, well, then you have nothing, right? So there has to be tokens before you can use smart contracts. So now the question is, well, what kind of tokens are there? Well, there are all these tokens that are not trustless, right? There's issued USD Tether, there are federated 2A peg tokens, there are and then there is Ethereum itself, right? Ether, that token. So Ether is the only token that is actually trustless on the Ethereum network. And now the question kind of becomes, well, why would Ether have value in a world where Bitcoin exists? And the reason I say Bitcoin is because Bitcoin being, quite obviously, in my opinion, and probably not everybody's opinion, but I still think it's quite obvious, the better store of value. So if you have the option of storing your value in Ether or storing your value in Bitcoin, why would you choose Ether over Bitcoin? And in fact, you don't hear this, but if Vitalik were to disclose how many coins he has where, I am willing to bet that a sizable amount of that is in Bitcoin, and that's not a coincidence. So my point with this is that Ether is sort of in this twilight zone of what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to do. And if it turns out that Ether is literally useless because it doesn't store value, then a lot of the use cases that use Ether as collateral, they start failing because it's not going to be worth anything. And this is long-term, right? And okay, so then if you take the opposite view and you say, no, that's not true, even though Ether is not a store of value, you can actually, just because you can use it in all these amazing smart contracts and because you can use it as collateral, that's why ETH has value.
Yeah, it's like a utility token, people say. It gets its value from its utility, right?
It's a utility, sure. Okay. So, well, if that is your opinion, then actually Spacechains can do the exact same thing, but without all the speculation downside that comes with having this highly speculative.
You're saying that with Spacechains, you could do a lot of, like, you can make a chain for whatever you want to do on ETH, but it would basically run on Bitcoin, right? You wouldn't have to have this extra token that you would need to kind of have some sort of stable store of value. Is that what you're saying?
No. Yeah.
Yes and no?
Yeah. So I haven't gone into that yet. So specifically, what a space chain cannot do is it also doesn't have a decentralized store of value token. So the same use case that I'm skeptical of, that I think doesn't exist in Ethereum, and that also doesn't exist for the space chains. But everything else, so if you say, oh, there's non-store of value utility in ETH, and that's why it has value, that is actually perfectly, you can replicate that inside of a space chain. And so specifically the space chain token that I haven't talked about yet, it is a one-way peg, a perpetual one-way peg token, meaning that you can destroy your Bitcoin and generate a space coin on a space chain. And in doing so, you have created a token that basically can be used to pay for fees, etc. But it's a token that is very deliberately inferior to Bitcoin. If you want to speculate on the future success of the space chain, you're not going to burn a bunch of your Bitcoins and convert them to space coins. No, you're just going to hold Bitcoin, because you know that if the chain becomes more popular and more people need to use space coins, they will have to burn their Bitcoins the moment they actually have to use the chain. And in burning their Bitcoins, they actually give more value to the Bitcoins that are not burned. So that's basically the mechanism. And I think, maybe I should stop there and let you say what you think thus far.
Yeah, so I know what you're saying. I think this is kind of known as, it's a little bit like, sounds like proof of burn, right? So I guess what a lot of people might assume, our listeners, that there are all these chains popping up and people know each chain has its own new coin, which people want to buy up very early because they believe in the project, and they think that if they buy this coin cheap, then when this project succeeds, they'll be able to make a lot of money, and then they kind of dump it, right? And then you kind of get these, and it's very, very hard to start a new chain, because how do you distribute the token? Or I've seen like a lot of projects get ruined by this kind of, I guess, investors going in and buying up the coin and then dumping it, and then it becomes like it has all sorts of issues. But what you're saying with the space chain, because you basically have to get a space chain coin, you basically have to, I guess, spend Bitcoin or burn Bitcoin. So the space chain coin will never be worth more than Bitcoin is, because if the space chain coin was like traded and it went up in value and it became more than Bitcoin, and people could just get it by burning Bitcoin. So it's basically, it's kind of, it has an upper limit of the price of Bitcoin, I suppose. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And there's one thing I kind of want to add to what you were saying. Like, I think it's important to be specific about what the problem is with speculative tokens. The problem with the speculative token is that there is profit in making other people believe that the token is going to be worth more in the future. And it doesn't matter whether or not that's true. So let's say you and I, we create Chris Ruben token or something, right? And if we can convince our audience that we're going to do amazing things and we're going to build this gaming platform with this token and so many users are going to be using it, then everybody thinks, oh, the price will be higher in the future. So they go and they buy our token for an inflated price, and we get all the money as if we have already done it, but we haven't done anything yet. And that's exactly where the disconnect is. You get paid for making people believe that the future is bright. You don't get paid for making a bright future.
I think we can actually tie this into NFTs in general. I think there's a general incentive problem there, where I've seen this a lot in the gaming space when people were issuing their NFTs. And I think the same thing happens when you're making a new chain. Because the success or the stability, I guess, or the popularity of your chain depends on the value of your token or coin. So the project developers or leaders, they end up kind of overhyping and making false promises just to kind of keep the price high. Like, so we have like, Chain 2.0 is coming out soon, or we've got this partnership with Microsoft, and then it kind of, it skews the development a lot, right? And then it really messes with it. So that's what I've kind of seen. And but
there are two aspects to that, and you're totally right. Like, there are two aspects there. One, everybody gets money, right? Everybody who proposes a chain gets easy money, because the chain exists to tell a story. It doesn't exist to make technology. So if even if you're a bad developer, you get to build. Okay, so that's the first part. And then the second part is, okay, so now you're building and you're figuring out, all these promises that I made, I guess I wasn't able to deliver them anyway, right? So now you have the choice of, do I just accept
give the money back?
No longer getting funded, or give money back? Yeah. Or do I just, okay, maybe next year I'll be able to build something. I have some new ideas. They are also great. So guys, 2.0 is coming, right? And then you just keep it going because you want to keep the funding going, because you want to keep working on your thing that's never going to go anywhere. Maybe because you don't want to, you feel like you have to deliver or something, and you just keep the scam going. But there's no failure, right? Failure, like when the developers realize they can't build anything, that's not the end of success. They can still be successful even if they can't build anything, and then it all goes to shit.
Yeah, well, I think we've definitely seen that, and I think we'll see more of it going forward. I guess the kind of the flip side on that is that a lot of projects don't get built because developers like what's I don't know. It's hard for somebody who wants to go out and make a space chain. Maybe it's rightfully so that it's hard, but they've actually got to get some sort of investment or funding. But maybe that's the right way. But there's a lot of, I suppose, cynicism where you'll hear, well, they only built that because they raised $1 billion or something on an ICO, and it's like.
Yeah. Well, that's a very tricky thing, right? Because it's the self-entitlement of like, look, I have a great idea and I think it deserves being built. Chris, do you want to give me some money? And you're like, no, why would I give you money? And I ask a bunch of people and everybody says no. And then I see this ICO thing and I'm like, well, my great idea deserves being built. So I'm just gonna ICO it because that's it's sort of like stealing for a good cause, right? But the problem is you're the judge of the good cause, because in your head your plan is amazing and it deserves to exist. And these can be good people sometimes, right? They're not all like scammers, but it's usually kind of the second layer, right? It's naive people who feel like they deserve building their amazing thing that's going to change the world in their heads, which usually it doesn't end up like that. Getting funding from these just cynical ICO investor types that are like, sure, let's make a token. You can build your amazing project, and the being naive only plays into the pump, right? It's just perfect.
I think there's probably some sort of Greek mythology or story into this. What did they call them? Like
that would be interesting.
The thing that funded your project is the thing that's gonna ultimately make it fail. That's the kind of the cost that you pay, right? The Achilles heel. The token that made you fund it is in a way what kind of sets the seed of perverse kind of incentives, and maybe.
But you're right. So you're right. On the flip side, it means that things like Spacechains, which are, in my opinion, something like I'm not too like. Well, it's not easy to build them, right? If we ICO'd and we started to build Spacechains that way, there would be funding and they would get built. But like you were saying, they would get built in a way that just ultimately passes by the goal. Well, especially Spacechains, because very specifically the goal is not to have a shitcoin. I'm also like more optimistic long term, where I think that once the need is dire and once Bitcoin just keeps growing and block space keeps becoming more scarce, things like Spacechains and all my other proposals, StateChains, soft chains, they become more and more appealing, and eventually there is going to be enough of a demand for it that is just going to happen.
I think that's
very strongly how I feel.
Well, we're seeing that with Lightning, and obviously Lightning isn't like as popular as Ethereum is, but I think nevertheless it's a good, stable, steady state, and it's growing. Especially at MintGox events, and it's just kind of, I guess it's like it's slow and steady wins the race. Hang in there kind of thing. Yep. I do have another kind of thought though, but I guess technology itself is quite indifferent to all these kind of like coins and markets and pumps. So would you think it's fair to say that a project could be funded, let's say immorally or wrongly, by a big ICO, but it could actually come up with some great technology? And is there something like in, say, that Ethereum that you find quite interesting, or that's a good idea, or we should do that on Bitcoin? I know a lot of people are talking about like roll-ups and stuff and ZK whatever. So
no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So I see that as sort of stealing money and then giving some of it to charity. And it's a good thing that you gave money to charity, right?
The mafia boss made the orphanage.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I look at that, very crudely. But that doesn't take away that it's not a good thing that money went to charity, right? And in this case, yes, there
Or
is
money
some
funded a cure for
excellent.
cancer or something like that, or like,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
example, you would still use the cure for cancer if it was funded by, the Marvels. I
yeah,
don't know. I
yeah.
don't know. But
Yeah. I mean, I think if the good that you're doing is really obviously much better than the harm you did, maybe you can make a case for it. But I think the problem is you can't predict that ahead of time, and most of the time it's not going to end up like that. So so I think even if you think that that's the case, right? Even if you think the harm you do is less than the good you're going to do, I think it's hubris to think that that prediction is actually going to come true, and you got to be more humble. Um, but yeah, there are definitely good things that are happening in Ethereum, in the altcoin world, and I think a lot of that is around zero knowledge proof work, and zero knowledge proofs in general. They're a very exciting field that it's something that Bitcoin developers have been talking about before Ethereum even existed, as something that's potentially going to be very useful even for Bitcoin, and the interesting thing is that the people that are working on that, they write all these scientific papers, and it was all theory up until now, because a lot of these use cases are a lot of cryptography related use cases are sort of unnecessary when you have a server, right? If you have some kind of trusted third party involved, a lot of these fancy things just are not necessary. So now we have this system where it becomes necessary to have no trusted third party in the middle, and a lot of this novel cryptography suddenly has a use case, and well, so that's exciting and it's cool. And these people that do this research, they just kind of want to, they just want to see it in action and experiment with it. And they're not trying to shitcoin or anything. They're just looking to build things that are actually valuable and are going to be valuable for Bitcoin in the future once it's sort of ready to be adopted for Bitcoin. I think. Um, and yeah, they come across Vitalik Buterin, they come across Ethereum, and they get an Ethereum research fund grant thingy that simultaneously pumps the price of Ether and gets them to do their research. And it is valuable research. So I think those are some examples, and I can go more deeply into like how these rollups and stuff work, but maybe that's probably going to be a little bit too technical.
yeah, I think you could probably
there's
point
interesting
to
stuff.
another pod. I should say that Ruben has his own podcast, which is great, called the Unhashed Podcast, and he has a really good conversation with Eric Wall where they go into this in more detail. So I recommend checking that out. That's his Unhashed
Yeah.
Podcast, which we'll link to that.
Episode 129.
Yeah, no, it was quite good. I quite enjoyed it. I had to listen to it a few times, but
Yeah, that's we're not holding back. We're just talking to
no,
each other, not to the audience.
it's so good, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think there is like a disconnect in a way. I think a lot of people in Ethereum, I think a lot of the developers I've spoken to, they kind of think that people bought ETH and people on board with the Ethereum experiment. This is cool, cutting edge research, and that's what the kind of, I guess, the ICO is for. It's for let's fund this amazing Ethereum experiment. But I think a lot of the users thought it's not an experiment and this is going to be the stable future of computing. That's kind of, I felt like a little. I remember I had a friend who bought a lot of Ethereum, and then I told him, I kind of sent him a clip of Vitalik saying something like, "Oh yeah, well this is all experimental, and we're going to have to move to like ETH2 and all this kind of stuff." And the investor's like, "Well, I didn't know this. That's not how it was sold to me," kind of thing. So I guess he should have done his due diligence or something, or research. But yeah,
It's a bit of both, right? Like, I don't think you can issue an ICO and, like, even with the purest of intentions, I don't think you get around the scam, because you're profiting from the fact that other people are going to see it as a pump and dump, and they are pricing your token based on that. So you're getting you're getting value from the fact that people know it's going to work as a scam in the future, and that's why they're paying a high premium on your token. So even if you have the purest of intentions and you say, no, we don't want this token to pump, and please don't take this too seriously. We just want to get some modest money, blah blah blah. Doesn't matter. And it could even be a good strategy to claim to be serious, right? And
yeah,
it might be even be fake. Like, you don't know. I just don't think in this current climate, it's just nearly impossible to do a moral ICO. I think that's I think space coins really are one of the few solutions there where you do it in such a way that it's not it's just it can't pump basically.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, like, does Spacechains, does it need any sort of soft fork to happen, or does it just need the will, or is it possible now, or?
Yeah. So ideally, we get SIG-Hash AnyPrev out, which is hopefully going to be the next soft fork after we
Which
get
is
Taproot, but
it's good
who
for
knows?
Lightning for our viewers. So this is a proposal to the Bitcoin, which will actually make Lightning a bit better, but it also has a use case for the peg in. You say, or the for speech?
No, in this case, it's for the blind merge
Oh, the
mining
blind
mechanism. So the
merge mine. Sorry, yeah.
mining basically.
Okay, yeah.
To mine the space chain, ideally you would have SIG-Hash AnyPrev out, and the reason for that is because it actually functions as a sort of a covenant, and a covenant is sort of a transaction that ahead of time it's already decided how it's going to be spent in the future. So you can't change your mind. And sort of what we do is we create this framework of transactions where one transaction after the next goes into the Bitcoin blockchain, and if you don't have a covenant, you just have to sign a transaction and then forget the key if you never want to change your mind.
Got you.
But that wouldn't be trustless.
Trusted setup.
Here,
be like Zcash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not as bad because the trusted setup is the worst thing someone can do if they don't forget the key is to just halt the chain. They can't steal funds or anything.
Yeah.
And which would be the case in Zcash. You could literally inflate the supply and
I
stuff
think
like that. So that's way worse.
I wonder if like Edward Snowden knows, that with Zcash, so you're basically trusting that. I think Zuko and a bunch of other people, I think maybe Peter Todd was there. They drove into the middle of the desert, and they kind of did like a setup, and they told everybody they threw away their keys, which they probably did. Yeah. But if one person or something had kept it and didn't tell the others, then at some point they could like steal all the Zcash or something like that. Which is, I don't blame them. They wanted to start the chain. There was no other better solution, perhaps, but.
It's even worse.
Okay.
So the disks they received to do the setup with, they were available online for auditing, and then suddenly they got quietly removed.
Oh, that's suspicious.
And then a year later, they announced that they had hard forked, and taken out a bug that could have made inflation possible, but they are fairly certain, and it's still not 100% certain, I believe. They're fairly certain no inflation occurred and nobody abused the bug.
You can't tell because privacy coins.
Well, yes and no, because what they did was they sort of they made it so that you have to move your coins from one system to the other system, and so that would be kind of like a one-time audit of the supply. Sure. And I'm sure not all the coins have moved. So if literally all the coins moved, you would be 100% certain. But because not all the coins moved, there could have been inflation to the degree that there's still coins on the original side. So they could have done some modest inflation there. We don't know. And Zuko sat on this for about a year together with like some of their devs. So for a year, they just had the keys to the kingdom, basically. And this is the type of risk you run into with these like advanced zero knowledge proofs that nobody actually knows how they work, that are very difficult to audit. That's just kind of the crazy land that we're in. And to be fair, it's going to get better. But this is just like a very typical example of what ICOs do, right? And what these altcoins do. They create technology that's not ready yet, and they claim to be first, and they claim to be innovative, and then it's just stupid, right? Because they're just abandoning every principle just to be first and get a pump going, basically.
Yeah, no, well, preaching to the choir here,
Yeah.
But yeah, but like, is there anything else you want to talk about on your projects before? I think we might just shift gear to gaming a little bit, because Ruben is actually going to play a game, and after we finish the podcast, we're actually going to do some games for the community. But is there anything you just wanted to finish up on Spacechains, or is there anything that?
No, I think we pretty much.
Maybe just to summarize, I think, because I'm kind of cognitive of the fact that a lot of our people aren't super technical, but it's I'm going to summarize and try and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's lots of different scaling solutions and different chains out there that are claiming to be used for gaming, but in our opinion, in a way, they have trade-offs that they're not really they're not really acknowledging such as scalability issues, and eventually they're going to hit some sort of dead end or issues. Whereas kind of a more conservative approach, like a side chain on a Bitcoin, you inherit a lot of the decentralization and trustlessness of Bitcoin, but there are trade-offs. But ultimately it's a more secure, scalable way to kind of do, let's say, more different style of use cases, such as microtransactions or NFTs in gaming in a more scalable way. I probably didn't summarize that the best way, but
it's reasonable. I would say like one other big advantage is that there is no altcoin involved, right? Any other chain that you're using for your gaming use case, there's always going to be a token. And if you just want to focus on your game, you're inevitably going to be, involved in the pump of whatever that token is, and you can't get away from that. And now you can, because Spacechains just don't have that. There is no pumpable token.
Yeah, like I've seen lots of people who like. I'm actually quite skeptical on NFTs, even though I did it. I mean, I think there's something there, but I think it's so hard to get the economics right if you make a token for a game. But I've seen people issue NFTs or tokens for games, and you just basically get sharks in trading, which ruins your gameplay, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we like Lightning gaming here, because we can do gaming with Bitcoin, and obviously Bitcoin, obviously it pumps and dumps, whatever, but less and less so over time, and ultimately it's going to be more stable. So a space chain would, for example, let you do something similar, but also more. But I guess you could issue a speculative asset on the space chain, right?
Like it's definitely possible. Like
impossible.
the choice is not to do it, and I would say it's not a space chain if you don't use the space coin mechanism.
But you could do like interesting smart contracts or different type of DeFi, I suppose, with the Bitcoin on a space chain, which you couldn't do on the base layer.
Yes, absolutely. But again, there's not going to be something equivalent to a trustless store of value token, right? So it's difficult to get you can't literally get your Bitcoins into a smart contract unless you use some kind of federation or something that issues Bitcoin on this space chain. So that is one significant downside that I would argue exists for every altcoin. But because these altcoin tokens are generally worth something, you can sort of use it as a store of value as long as the pump and dump kind of resumes and it continues to have value.
Do you envision a Lightning network forming on a space chain to maybe help with like opening channel fees or something? Would that be a possible use case? And it could be like a bridge between.
Absolutely.
Okay, because I think that's one of the issues with Lightning at the moment is it can be expensive to open channels for new people, and maybe going forward that becomes more and more expensive. So not everybody can have a UTXO, right? I think it's
So you can always use the Lightning network on any chain. You could even make it compatible with Ethereum, which I mean, I'm not sure how you would do that, but I'm sure it's possible. But again, like if you wanted to have Bitcoins on a space chain and use that inside of a channel, then you do need someone to issue that Bitcoin on there, because space coins themselves are not like they might be near the price of a Bitcoin, but not once you're like storing value with them, or once you're trying to use them in a Lightning channel. So it's not going to be like an obvious extension to making Bitcoin payments. It's going to be kind of making all payments for like issued assets, sending and receiving NFTs, making payments in two-way pegged assets that are issued on this chain, using maybe stable coins, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. No, I think time will tell, and once we might see a space chain soon. But I think, as you said, as we start to see kind of, I guess, more expensive use of the base chain and a lot of the altcoins possibly failing or having their own scaling issues, I'm quite confident we'll see kind of more interest in these kind of Bitcoin sidechain technology. Yeah. And
there is one more thing that I forgot, because we were talking about Sigasheni Prevouts, right? So that would be one way of creating these chains, but there's actually a way to do it without making any software changes to Bitcoin, but it has a number of issues. One of those issues being that you have to, ahead of time, you have to pay a high amount of fees in order to kind of make this framework of transactions, and somebody has to pay for that, and it could be easily like $100,000 or something. for running that chain for a couple of years. So that's one downside. And actually, I think that was yesterday. I've yet to look at it closely, but somebody reported a CVE bug relating to Bitcoin that actually, I think, Spacechains are affected. And the bug is that you are supposed to, I mean, this is slightly technical, but I'm going to say it anyway. My apologies if people would understand. If you have an unconfirmed transaction and it's signaling RBF, replaced by fee. So this means that the unconfirmed transaction can be replaced by another transaction paying a higher fee. Then if you spend from that unconfirmed transaction, so before it's confirmed, you're already spending it. The second transaction is supposed to inherit RBF. So it's supposed to also be replaceable with a fee, regardless of whether it's signaling that it's replaceable. And this latter part is written in the BIP, but apparently is not actually currently enforced on a network. And that has implications for
Well, it's in the
network.
mempool. You can't really enforce it, can you? Well, I guess each node can enforce it separately if it's in the mempool, right? It's a
So this is called a propagation rule,
Sure.
right? So if you try to replace the transaction and it's not allowed, what that means is that the entire network is not going to propagate your transaction. It's never going to, the miners are never going to receive it. If a miner does mine it into a block, it's always going to be valid. So it's not about validity, it's about propagation.
Sure.
And practically speaking, that means your transaction is not going to happen.
Got you. Okay, so that would stop this.
So yeah, I mean, it can be fixed, right? Bitcoin Core can just issue a new version of Core where it does do that. But like I said, it actually affects the Lightning Network as well. And I haven't looked into it closely enough to kind of
breaking news.
fully know, but that's yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's interesting. Yeah. Well, I kind of think with Bitcoin, a lot of times there's no particular rush, right? You know, we want to do these things slow and steady, right? And we're getting Taproot, right? So maybe you'll think of something as a Bitcoin sorcerer. As Taproot's and you go, wait a minute, we can do something. We can make like a tap chain. I don't know.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't start with an S, so it's unlikely. But yeah.
That's true. Yeah. I have to think of some other pun. You're gonna run out of things if it has to be with S. Anyway, cool. Well, let's just switch to gaming. So, Ruben is going to actually do a lap around. So he's going to play our game Bitcoin Rally, and after this, I'm going to do some games for the community. So don't worry about that. But yeah, so let's just take a look at the leaderboard. So we have a leaderboard, and let me share my screen here. Yeah, okay. This is where I have to find my tab. Okay, there we go. Can you see that? Is that? It's not.
I see Kaiji.
I know. It's. Let's talk about Kaiji. Let's talk about anime. No.
That's right.
There we go.
Well, anime and gaming is related, right? So that seems.
It's all culture.
It's one of those things that people tend to like.
This is true. So currently we have Nicola Dorier on top, and you were quite ambitious. You said you wanted to beat Nicola Dorier, which is.
That's right. I got pretty close to 50. I did get under it in some of my laps, but not all of them. So it's gonna be very cllose, I would say. But I find it very difficult to be consistent. So that's my main issue. So I can very well see myself failing, but there's a real chance that Nicholas is going down, which we all like to see, of course.
We're gonna have a Dutch-French war going on here.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Well. I think, it's going to be quite interesting. And I don't want to say too much because Ruben did some practice laps and they were quite promising. So do you want to get the game open, Ruben? And I'll set it up on my end.
So I have to turn off my camera, unfortunately, because I only have one USB-C port and that's what my controller has to connect to.
Okay.
Got this nice little Xbox Series S controller here.
Wow.
So I'm going to go with that.
Not a PlayStation guy.
No, both. My PlayStation is still in South Korea.
So why say no? We can actually talk about this. Are you quite a gamer then?
Yeah. I'd say like these days I don't game that much, but I like games. And when I was younger, I played them a lot, and that includes Mario Kart. So there you go.
Oh,
actually, fun little story. I attended a local Mario Kart Double Dash tournament. And I got first place, but it was very amateurish. But...
A professional Mario Kart player. I think you might take the top spot here. I really hope you do. But obviously, when the pressure's on you, join the stream.
Yesterday night, so if I take it real serious, I know I can totally do it. But for now, it's still going to be close. But I think that's good too. Like I feel like the most fun thing is like just continually barely beating scores, right, and just keeping it going instead of just like destroying a score. Like that's not fun.
I can say like the best score for this, it doesn't count in practice mode. Someone got a score of like 44, but they have power-ups in practice mode, so maybe it doesn't count. So but
impressive.
But they're the current champion who are on track to win half a Bitcoin for our tournament. You remember the past?
Are they using the Satoshi cards or some other card?
I don't know. Well, actually, all the cards are the same. That's a secret. Technically, they're all technically the same. But you know, because I had to before each card was different, and then the players figured out which was the best card. And during tournaments, everybody just turned up in the best card. So I had to make them all the same to get like people using different ones.
Yeah, that's how it goes. The same with Mario Kart.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, you do your thing. I've made a game that'll be waiting for you.
I'm also gonna very quickly grab some water. I ran out.
Yeah, go for it. I can handle it here. Yeah, so folks, for people who are wanting to do some fun races after this, we'll finish up with Ruben and I'll start a new stream where we're doing some fun races, which will be testing the new build. I'm also going to try out this new kind of Twitch chat giveaway, and we're experimenting with ways to engage the audience. So we'll do like a question, and you basically have to write your answer in a Twitch chat with like your Zebedee gamer tag, and then the people who got the question right, I'll reward you Bitcoin. So I'll talk more on that later. It might fail. I'm just testing it out after this. But yeah, excited to try that. Oh, I realize I need to cancel this because I turned the sound off, didn't I? Let me do it again.
I'm not a fan of the sound in the game, I gotta say. I turn it off right away.
Go, Brett. No, I think a professional, you want it like professionals even turn off the graphics, don't they?
Yeah, but sound, I mean, it's probably a hint towards your gameplay, right? I don't know. Was it a fun race that I have to pick?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just making it now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so fun race. Europe server. There we go.
Yeah. And I won't say the password out loud, but something.
Yeah. So people don't guess it. Otherwise, we get random people joining.
I'll give a hint. It's 10 letters. Good luck. Yeah, I'm in.
Are you?
Looks good. I think so. Or am
Are you in the globe?
Oh yeah, no. I'm picking my cards.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there we go. I can see it here.
Ooh.
Oh
yeah, that's my. I see.
Yeah. So.
Globe. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A little exhausted from talking. We should have done this in the beginning.
Sorry. That's your excuse going forward.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay.
I think it'll be close.
Okay. Well, let's go.
Memories of Mario Kart.
Oh, Somsen Ruben. Can he break the record? Okay, so the first lap is a good practice one. You know, don't worry too much about trying to get a high score.
Yeah, you gotta take it seriously from the start.
Yeah, okay, go for it then. Get in the zone as quickly as possible. Good corners, nice and tight.
Oh,
hit the fence. Always a tricky one, that one. This is a tricky one as well, but you managed to do it quite well.
It's the question mark blocks not being there that put me.
You miss your guiding, right? Your markers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I was not expecting that, but I'm still doing all right. Looking good.
This is really good, actually. So yeah, I'm quite confident. So I almost don't want to talk because I want you to do well.
All right.
Nicolas Dorier was
Especially
swearing a lot in
this
French
part.
at this point.
Ooh.
Oh, quite a lot of crazy sticks.
Yeah, sort of recovered there. Could have been worse.
Could have been worse.
Yeah, okay.
You haven't crashed though, which is good.
Yeah, that's a nice
But-
one.
You want to almost crash though. Like just miss the fence because you get those tight corners.
Yeah.
Got the power up. Okay. Two more laps. 2 more laps.
2 more, okay. Yeah, that's better.
Very good. I think this might be better than
That's a good
Nicolas
one.
Dorier, but
Yeah.
still
so
plenty of
far, so
time to
good.
mess up.
That's right. Oof, that was great, but okay.
I'm impressed. Like
Right there.
you're much better than me, and I made the game.
Oh God, what just happened? Am I going the wrong way? Man, I fat fingered the wrong button.
Oh, it's all good. We got another lap to go.
Well, that was a waste. That was going to be a perfect lap there.
Yeah, it was very good.
Close to perfect. Okay, wow. I'm going to make this one count now. Oof.
No pressure.
Are you kidding me? Decent. Ooh.
Ah,
Oof. Well, this is gonna. Yeah, this is not gonna be it. So I hope one of my first rounds was.
the second one
Good
was the
enough.
best.
Okay. Looks like I'm guessing is not gonna be it. I think it's gonna be very close, but just not enough.
You'll have to make another chain so you can come on and try again.
Yeah.
I kind of want to give you another go. I want to give you another go just because I thought one more you could have grabbed it.
Yeah, I mean that third round was it, I think, but I just messed up there. Well, yeah, I was messing up and then I pressed the button, so it would have been.
You
I'm not
can
sure. Yeah.
can actually withdraw your sats now if you want to try that.
Okay,
You got some coins.
I'll give it a try.
This is quite interesting. Wow. Yeah.
So I have to use the wallet, ZBD wallet, right?
Any wallet will work. Any Lightning wallet. So, but the Zebedee wallet will work the best because it's like the same node. Right.
Needs camera permission. All right, I haven't given it.
Okay, I'm gonna close that. Okay. What am I doing here? I need to share the screen, don't I?
Yeah, I haven't been able to scan the thing.
Oh, don't worry. You can do it later. Okay.
Oh,
we'll,
okay, because
we do
it
that
says
later.
host.
We'll sort that out later. Oh yeah, host ended the game. It should let you with. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll figure it out later. Okay. Cool. So how do you think you did?
I think 51 seconds.
51 seconds. So that would put you a good second. You would be in between France and Australia. Yeah, like so. I have to say, when we did the practice run earlier, you actually beat Nicolas Dorier.
Yeah.
You got like 50.5. So
49 was my goal though. I wanted to be sub 50.
yeah. So anyway, let's gonna take a commercial break now, and we'll say the result after. No, I'm joking. let me try and submit the score, and then I will refresh the page, and we'll see how you did. Okay. There you go. Can you see that?
Hold on, I'm still. Sorry. Need to switch tabs.
Oh
There
yeah.
we are. Ruben Somsen. What? I might.
Yeah,
Did I
we
do it?
have a new champion, 49.436 seconds.
You're messing with me, man.
No,
I
you
thought
did
I
it.
Get it.
I thought so as
Oh,
well,
shit.
but yeah, I have to go back and watch Nicholas, because his was like a perfect thing, I think. But I think you just managed to, I guess like what?
Yeah.
That's like half a second difference, maybe a bit more. So that's like nothing,
No,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
it's a second and a bit, so 1.2 seconds. Yeah.
that. Oh yeah. So yeah, it is. Yeah. Sorry. Well, yeah. Still, that's very, very impressive for somebody who only played it
Oof.
last
Oh,
night.
I'm
And
glad. Oh man. Yeah,
yeah,
I felt I messed it up.
we're gonna have
Wow.
to tag Nicola and just let him know that the emperor's been dethroned.
That is awesome. I gotta say, Nicholas was very indirectly helpful because I actually
Yes,
went
that's
and
true.
watched his run.
You studied it,
So
didn't you?
I learned from the master,
So
and that's how I
Ruben was telling me
was able to.
he studied Nicholas and found out what he did wrong and tried to correct it. So he did the first
Yes.
the first turning wrong, right? But you are a professional Mario Kart player, so
It was the first turn of the difficult part, right, where you have to like zigzag like this.
yeah.
That first turn, normally you're tempted to stay on the right side of the track. My camera's opposite, but I mean the right side of the track. But you actually have to veer a little bit to the left and then take it. And that's the one thing that Nicholas did wrong that allowed me to beat him. But otherwise,
Our champion racer
else,
does that as
I
well.
just copied what he did.
Yeah, Tokal P11, who's our champion, he takes that first turn very, very narrow. And like my instinct is to go wide and kind of cut across and go fast, but no, you must take it narrow. Probably because it's not a super accurate racing simulator. So if it was probably a racing simulator, maybe you would have to do the other one because you get like oversteer if you tried to take it that narrow or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I know, like with racing, it's like you want to get out of the turn with as much speed as possible.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's fair point. So I guess obviously Nicola was the first, but whenever someone sets a record, it basically makes it easier for people to then break that record, right?
Yeah. But I'm very happy because that's what I wanted. I wanted sub 50, and I got it.
That's awesome.
That was perfect.
I don't think we'll see anybody beating that for a while, to be honest. So.
I think they can.
Yeah.
Like I said,
they're going to study it.
I only started last night. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Take a close look at Nicholas.
I have a feeling.
Watch his videos. Watch my video.
Nicola might want to come back on and do it, so we might have to do that at some time, and then we'll get you back on, and then anyway, so and so.
Yeah.
But I think if that third one, if you didn't crash on the third one, it could have been even less.
Yeah, that was really a good one. But like there are two things, right? Like I messed it up and then I pressed the wrong button to make it even worse. But it was bad. Yeah, I think it might have been still okay if I hadn't pressed that button, but no, it was definitely, regardless, it was a mistake. Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, I think we'll end on that high note. So but I guess like
I'm glad. This is exactly what I wanted. So yeah.
Well done. And it's also like 10:30 there, so you're probably tired as well. So so where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I'm at Somsen Ruben on Twitter. You can check out my work at tiny.cc/Somsen. There's also a link on my Twitter, so that might be easier. I do the Honest podcast.
Yeah, great podcast.
Yeah, definitely check that one out. It's a fun little podcast. We do both like technical stuff and a lot of like just fun little banter. So it's sort of like a nice casual / tech show. And the fun thing is, secretly, all the cool Bitcoiners listen to it, but nobody wants to admit because
really,
the show is kind of silly as well. So
yeah,
that's everybody secretly
great theme tune
listens to it.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thanks for joining so much, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon, maybe. So we'll have to catch up.
Yeah.
Now that we're both
a fun little episode
in Europe. Yeah, awesome. Anyway, take care. See ya.
All right.
Bye. I'll let you drop off. Okay, that was awesome, folks. Yeah. So thanks for those who have waited long to the end. I'm going to do the test drives now. I'm just going to go to the bathroom first, so give me about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to start a stream again. So let's start in about 10 minutes. Awesome, folks. So I'll see you in a bit.